The 60s, one of the most politically changing decades in American history, start off with the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was broadcast on TV, seeing blood, sweat, and tears go in the war. Super controversial. Minority groups started stepping up. Discriminated groups started stepping up. But the most significant thing that happened, personally to me, in 1960, when black people got the right to vote. Today, hi, my name is Michael Miller Jr., and today we'll be talking about what it's like being black in America and the history behind it. I like this topic because I really didn't put perspective how short ago Voting Rights Act was or the Jim Crow laws were. I'm 19 years old. I thought this thing happened like 70, 80 years ago. No, I was very wrong. 2 generations. I'm the second generation to have full access to voting privileges in America as an African American man. And about the second and a half generation of the Jim Crow laws. We'll get into that later. My grandparents lived through all this, so they're really guided me through this process. Today, I'll be discussing the Jim Crow laws, how they shaped America, how the civil rights movement shaped America, black culture, and one of my personal favorites, black stereotypes. Let's get into it. First, Jim Crow laws. The Jim Crow laws are basically the way people got segregated between black and white. Okay? According to the American Express, the laws affected every aspect in daily life, mandating segregation, schools, parks, restaurants, everyday life, buses, everything. Everything got segregated by color. Racism was a big time thing back in this time. People were discriminated against just because of being a darker color. And then we fought World War II. Our men thought we were going to go out and fight a war, win the war, and come back to a celebrated country, to a different type of country. Yet they were terribly wrong. Still got discriminated against like they left last time. Now I have a little bit of background of Jim Crow laws and how it's segregated. Now the Jim Crow laws led to this next movement called the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement, if you look in every history class, in California at least I've seen, that if the majority of the population is not black, they don't really have a big emphasis on civil rights movement. It's a big time thing. They have a whole museum for it, so it has to be important, right? But you only go over for 2 chapters. Civil rights movement. Everyone knows about Rosa Parks, the bus boycotts, the Montgomery bus boycotts, the Freedom Riders, which are basically people who rode the bus for freely, whatever they want to do. Then you have March on Washington. A bunch of African Americans gathered their forces and literally marched on the Capitol Hill of Washington, and Martin Luther King delivered the most legendary speech, "I have a dream." Bloody Sunday was an effect of that. There's literally a movie named after it. Bloody Sunday, a bunch of white soldiers blew up and killed 6 young black girls. It was a very sad film. I may actually review it for my next speech. Then we have a couple organizations that are still active to this day. Knowing at least one of them is. We're talking about the NAACP, the National Association Advancement of Colored People. They do a lot. They've been around for at least 100 years. Back in the day when they were fighting for civil rights, they were doing anti-lynching campaigns because black people were getting lynched. I don't think y'all want to know what getting lynched is. It's very graphic. Then we have the Student Nonviolent Community, Coordinated Committee, which is basically a proper way to protest rights and stuff. But the biggest thing is August 6, 1965, Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Acts Right into law, a momentous achievement to the struggle for equal rights, according to the National Archives Foundation. These are all legit websites. The civil rights leaders, some of them you may know, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Wilbur Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, some of the big time boys. Now we discussed a little bit of civil rights movement. Now we're going to see how that has shaped black culture. When black culture speaks to me, I think of the Harlem Renaissance first. The Harlem Renaissance was a musical phenomenon. Some of the biggest names y'all listen to today that people sample to this day: James Brown, Ma Remy, Duke Ellington, some of these legendary jazz people. And we invented this thing called gospel. Gospel is a very upbeat type of Christian beat. According to the National Gallery of Art, while Harlem Renaissance may not be best known for literary performance, pioneering figures such as Langston Hughes, Zora Neale, Duke Ellington created the Afrocentric culture of America to this day. Black culture is also mostly involved with sports. Every time you see a black person, you commonly think they're an athlete. You don't really think of it second. Another thing that is part of black culture is a beautiful thing called soul food. Y'all may have heard of it. Fried chicken, catfish, chitlins, not the other one, chitlins. Basically, soul food, according to AAERG, soul food is a term for an ethnic cuisine, food traditionally prepared and eaten by African American culture. Y'all probably had soul food, y'all didn't know it. Soul food touches the soul, it's so good. It's a classic African dish. We talked about African American community in extensiveness, okay? Now let's talk about how all these things has affected into African American stereotypes, one of my favorite subjects. We talk stereotypes in America. According to the Smithsonian, we have decades old informants in the current day incrimination of African American stereotypes, including Manny Mandingo, Sapphire, Uncle Tom, and watermelons, have been informed by legal and social media status of African Americans. These stereotypes have actually been going on for hundreds of years. It's been going on a lot longer than we actually think. Stereotypes of African Americans are absolutely pathetic. Some of them say we don't have a dad. I have a dad. Some of them say we're all poor, even though 78% of us are in middle class. That's like a lot of us. Like 7 out of 10 people, black people that you meet are middle class. They're really not poor. Close to 8 out of 10. All right. This speech has been very powerful to me. It's spoken a lot about black rights and how people have advocated for black rights. Let's get real for 1 second. My grandma lived through the Jim Crow laws. She got discriminated against. My grandpa lived through it. My grandpa is no longer with me to this day, but he's still always with me at heart. They taught me a lot about being black, especially my mom and my dad. They taught about being strong, powerful, educated, and the world cannot corrupt you. So in my speech, I reviewed the Jim Crow laws and the Creek Break history. It could be so much expanded on more. The Civil Rights Movement, which could be so much expanded on more. Black culture, just scratching the surface of it. And lastly, scratching the surface on stereotypes of African Americans. I'm barely getting to the subject, and I cannot emphasize again. African American race is the best type of race. Thank you for listening to my speech, y'all. Y'all may know this as Black Power, or some of y'all may know this as Wakanda Forever. Thank you.